Hey, I'm Rob Morrow, and my co-host Janine Turner is here, and welcome to Northern Disclosure. This is a podcast about the show Northern Exposure that we did from 1990 to 95 on CBS, and we did about 110 episodes, and each podcast we're gonna talk about a different episode and bring on a different guest. Today's guest is the lovely and charming Cynthia Geary, who played Shelly, and she's just a great girl, and she had such great energy. You know, don't you remember her energy, Janine?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Northern Disclosure. Hello, Rob. This is such a delight. And Cynthia had such charm, and she was witty, and just the way. I kind of wished sometimes I could be like her character. Cynthia just let things. Her character would just let things roll off her back. You know, she's like, okay, you know. Except when Holling stood her up to get married, she wasn't very happy about that. She
wasn't happy about that. And by the way, I love your hair. I know you said last week was the final the final color, but today looks pretty great. So
okay, should this be the one, Rob? Should this be the winner?
I don't know. I kind of like the idea of you showing up and surprising us every week.
Okay, maybe I'll do that.
But you look great.
Thank you. You do too, Rob.
And last week's show with Barry Corbin was great. And I also want to just say to the audience, you can also watch the show. If you can either listen to it as a podcast or you can watch it on YouTube. But we have the Northern Disclosure channel, and so whichever you prefer as an audience. Either way is available. But we've been having fun. Barry Corbin was just for me personally. I don't know about you, Janine, but aside from, talking about the show and reminiscing, to spend time with you guys is such a joy. We had it was such an important moment in our lives. I mean, it changed all of our lives in significant ways that we're still. You said today people were talking, or yesterday people were talking to you in the street about the show. Like, it still informs our daily existence. So to be able to share and connect and look in the face of all of you guys is just it just warms my heart. I don't know how else to say it.
It warms my heart too, and I think often, especially as we've been doing this, how close we all still are. And we worked 18 hours a day with each other for over 5 years. And it's not like we were like a family. I think we were like a small family. It was sort of a pretend family, but it was a family for that insulated performance time. You know what I mean? You arrive and it's like family number 2. And we were so close with one another.
But it's funny you say that, because I think so too. You become a kind of... You share intimacies. I mean, when you're exhausted after, days and days of shooting in the middle of the night out in the cold, you become vulnerable. We saw each other's best and worst sides for sure. But I remember Josh taking real issue with something and telling me, this is not a family. We are nothing like a family.
That's not true.
I know, because I thought, because you're in Seattle, you're in LA, and we shot the show in Seattle, but the writers and the post production was in LA, and they weren't there a lot. And I remember he really took issue with the idea that when us in show business call our jobs family. I don't know why, but I get his point from a literal sense, but to your point. We did have there's certain things that we saw in each other that my family had never seen,
Mm-hmm. And we shared that for a lot of years, for 5 years, in a very intense kind of pressure cooker kind of atmosphere. And there was a vulnerability there. And you're right, we saw our worst, each other's worst and best. But we were, it's like there'd always be a kindred spirit, a kind of a connection that you can't lose. I think though the cast, we were kind of a good crop. You know what I mean? Everybody was kind at heart and hardworking and thoughtful and polite. I just think it was a kind of a magical. We had our own sort of utopia in our north to the future.
Absolutely.
We were north to the future, and we had our own little utopia there.
And it was, as you said, it's like the pressure cooker of it all. These gigs, I don't know if people realize, are kind of crucibles. You know, I'm not trying to say, oh, it's the hardest job in the world, but it's because you're being vulnerable in front of a camera, you're revealing yourself in front of a crew, because the schedules are so intense. We would do 7, 8, 9 pages a day, and and it was day in, day out, and you couldn't not show up. I mean, I don't think I ever missed a day because I was sick. I mean, if I was sick, I was shooting, and I there were certainly days where I was sick, and between takes I'd lay down on the floor on a sound blanket and then get up to do the shot, and hope that I could get it in one take. And by the way, I don't know about you, but over my long career now, I always act better when I'm sick.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't care. There's no, it's just, I just want to be, I'm just so present. Like, there's no artifice to it. So I always feel like there's something unique about those times when I'm sick. Like, I don't know why that is, but.
Well, I would often say some of my best work was at 2 a.m. When you're so tired. Yeah. I remember walking out to the set, and God bless the crew too. We could at least go lie down in between shots in our little campers. We didn't have anything glamorous there. We had little kind of campers. But I remember walking out at 2 a.m. and my hands would be hot. And my face, it was just the fatigue. That sort of. That's the same thing. I think it's an analogy that's similar to yours. Is that you just let everything go, and there's a real rawness and vulnerability, and there's a rawness and vulnerability to what you and I shared as these characters, and there's always a line that crosses between Janine and Maggie, and Joel and Rob Morrow and Fleischman, where we are those people, but we're not those people, and and then we have new people coming in, but we were a family, and I think a lot about the fact that those who are listening may not even realize, and I want to get on to Russian Flu because I think it was one of the best shows ever.
Good episode.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much for so many reasons, and I have my little list. But our producers and editors and writers, they were all in Los Angeles, and we were in this north to the future, beautiful paradise of Seattle and the Cascade Mountains. And it was good. And we did go to Hollywood premieres. We weren't big, hot stars around town. We didn't go have Hollywood lunches.
Which I think saved us. I think for me, I think I would have gotten in a lot more trouble if I was living in LA or New York at the time, because so much became, all of a sudden, the spotlight and the opportunities to do things that I'd never had. And I think and we took advantage when we could, but at least it wasn't a daily part of our lives. I think it was a good thing to be out of that.
We did do a lot of flights. At least I did on Alaska Airlines. But if we could, Rob, I'd love to talk about Russian Flu before our special guest Cynthia comes in. And I can't wait. I called Cynthia to ask her to be on the show the other day, and we spoke for 2 hours. I mean, nice. 2 hours. We went. We every now and then touch base with one another.
Russian Flu is the title of the episode. I don't think people realize that the titles. They have titles, but they don't get shown. But this was
episode 5.
This was episode 5, season 1, directed by David Carson, who went on to direct 3 episodes for us, and I really remember him fondly. He had a great touch. He was British, and he just had a real nice quality to him. And then it was written by David Assal as the credited writer. But as we've talked about before, on a show like Northern Exposure, the last pass on a script is usually by Josh Brand and John Falsey, who created the show. So, this particular show, I watched it last night, and I think it was kind of seminal in that it set up a lot of motifs that became really cool things on the show, like the dream. It was the first dream sequence, right? There was this trippy. I don't even understand the Twin Peaks sequence. It doesn't even. It's just so.
But that was the whole point. There. It was philosophical. I guess so. That's the way I think, though. I love that kind of thought process, and it's. I watched the show this morning, and I got such a kick out of it, and I started texting everybody. You got to watch this episode. You got to watch this episode, because it, as you say, we had the first flashback sequence, which was hilarious.
I love that shot of through your legs when you're on the bed.
Right, and then the wind blowing, and oh my gosh, it was so great. But I also like the way they brought in. May I do my little list? I love to do my little list. Okay, here's some of my favorite lines. I'll make it quick. I promise. I love Ed's line. Oh no, Chris is puking. Maurice is sick.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he says, they're both sick. Oh no, Chris is puking. Maurice is sick. That's Darren's line. I love how Elaine loves Maggie. That entire twist that they did. That Maggie was just so present. Oh well, Maggie said this, and I love Maggie. That look on your face, Rob, was so good when you're trying to find another pilot. Anybody but me, and Rick walks in the door and all that, and then I walk in the door, and then I kind of make this, and then there's this cut onto your face, and the look on your face told 1,000 stories. It was so good. Did you even catch it about yourself? That little look on your face when I walked through the door?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
That was a great
I think we should
look.
say also that Elaine, who played my fiance, is played by Jessica Lundy, and she came back a number of episodes over at least a few years before we broke up finally, our characters, that is. But she was really fun to work with, and the opening of the show, I think, is really fun, and that whole that whole 50s doo-wop song, and me kind of all of a sudden you see Joel in a different light. I'm dancing, I'm doing spins, I'm wearing a suit. It felt like the show kicked into another gear. You know, the Hi Ohio Ipsonaio, this native treatment for flu. It just started to bring in a lot of different aspects and have fun. I mean, the Twin Peaks scene is it just comes out of nowhere and it goes nowhere, and it doesn't really do anything except that it sets up that the show can do what it wants because they wanted to do it. And by the way, they were somewhat paying homage to Twin Peaks, which shot in Seattle as well. We were all shooting up there at the same time, and there was there's kind of competition between the shows of which was going to be the hit show. Ours turned out to be the hit show, but not taking anything away from Twin Peaks, which is a bit of a masterpiece.
Yeah, he was really terrific.
Lynch. He was one of the great directors.
And but I think the show had so many different levels that it experimented with in this episode. And then they were surprised to find that the audiences loved it so much. And one of my favorite scenes was your scene, Rob, with the town hall. And of course, I love federalism. I love local government, state government, and the way the people come together in their own areas to fix their, that whole kind of true grit thing. And those town halls, I can appreciate more now than I even did then. And all the things they started saying to you because they were so sick, and they called you what'd they call you? A Trotskyite? They called you a Trotskyite, and you're like a Rosenberg. They started saying all those things to you, and then and everyone's attacking you, and you're just going, I know, but I love the dialogue from the townsfolks about Russia and communism and whatnot. And then Ed gets in the car with you, and he goes, of course you didn't have any answers. Fleischman didn't have any answers, and Ed says, But Ed says, "Oh, well, I learned a lot." And you said, "You did?" And he goes, "Yeah, I never knew there was a power struggle in the Kremlin." You know what I mean? But after Andropatiev died, I don't even know who that was. I pride myself on history, but I'm not sure I got that one right. But little things like you're on the phone and you're calling for help, and you're just letting them have it. You're saying all these, politically incorrect things, and you're just really angry. And he goes, and that flunk, and you say, "Oh, and that flunky." And then on the other side of the line, you hear the man on the other side of the line say, "That's my nephew."
I miss that.
Things like that. And then you say, they think I'm a KGB point man for Central Alaska. I mean, and then Maurice comes in, that ship him to Siberia. Even if Joel Fleischman is incompetent, it's not a reason to ship him to Siberia. I mean, I don't know. I thought the writing, the references to sort of political intellectualism that people might not even know, they weren't afraid to take those risks.
No, and by the way, I'm so surprised that you didn't want that on your list of favorite lines.
Well, I didn't finish.
Okay.
In your dreams, Fleischman. Yes, that was the first
by
time.
The way, the first time and said twice in the episode.
Yes, that's right.
So that's that became a thing with them. But I also didn't understand the reference, because now we're talking about when you say in your dreams, we had already seen a dream where Maggie was this hot pilot, on my bed in this fantasy sequence in New York, and then when she says in your dreams, Fleischman's like, wait, how does she know what's in my dreams?
Right, that's right. Well, I don't think she ever really knew that per se.
No, but it's interesting that it's pointed. They kept bringing
it. They interwove it.
Yeah.
They interwove it. The dream and the friend, and then the friend shows. And also, I love that moment with the pilot. Of course, you're kissing her, so it was a little bit of a stretch. But you're kissing Elaine goodbye, and she's getting in the airplane, and the pilot says to you, "I like your sister." And you're like, right. She's not my sister.
Yeah, that's how they play with reality, and they play with realities, because there's. What's real and what's not. What planes of existence are we really on?
Yeah. Oh, and also there was a reference to Susan Sontag, or Sontag, however you say her name.
Sontag, yeah.
Sontag. Susan Sontag. I heard, and they even reference Susan Sontag, right? Like, who knows who she is unless you're an intellectual in New York. And I was in New York, and I tried to become an intellectual, and I actually went and listened to Susan Sontag recite Joseph Brodsky's poems.
Oh, cool. How interesting.
Before Northern Exposure. But I thought, oh my God, they're even referencing Susan Sontag. I don't remember.
And it's
where
a great
they did
line.
that,
It's a famous line. They talk about the fascism inherent in photography, in the image, and it's a famous quote of hers. I'm misquoting it, but it's basically it's about the notion of fascism in photography. And they started to drop in all these different references. And what was cool about the show for me is that you didn't have, you talk about being an intellectual. You didn't have to be an intellectual to love Northern Exposure. But if you were one, you were going to find a lot of fun stuff. But if you weren't, there was so much stuff that was on such a basic human level that it had nothing to do with intellect. The threesome relationship between Maggie and Elaine, your girlfriend, and you. I mean, everyone can relate to being. The romance. I see what you mean. Right,
the romance.
I see what you mean.
You loved her and wanted to see her.
Implied something else to me.
I don't mean that per se.
Right.
What I'm saying.
You mean the love triangle?
Thank you. Thank you. Torn between two lovers. I hate that song. Right. Torn between two lovers. You remember that song?
Lot of good. Yes, I do. There was a lot of good music in the show as well. And I think part of the reason, from what I understand, the show didn't stream for a long time was back then they used to make short-term deals for the rights. Now if you give a song to a show, it's in perpetuity forever. But so part of the reason the show wasn't available was because they put so much cool music in it.
Well, I'll just say I worked with Universal for about 3 years to try to get them to stream it, because I said, look, guys, people don't have DVDs really anymore, and the whole generation's missing it. And that was the big thing, was the music, was trying to find out. And 3 years, I would have these calls with them like once a month, every month. And how could they go back and relicense the music? And I bugged them so much. At one point, they said, no, we're not going to do it. But they said that to somebody else and not to me and to my face. So I called them back. I said, what's this here? What is this that I hear about the fact you're not going to actually really bring back the show and stream it? And they said, and so they continued on the process, and we finally got it done.
Such a weird thing. I have another show that's on a shelf, 33 episodes, called Street Time. I did with Terrence Howard, and it's the same thing. The music rights are just too expensive, so they won't even look at it.
Well, they figured it out. They were willing to do it. Okay, drum roll, please. We have the so awesome, brilliantly talented, terrific, good friend, Cynthia Geary, who played Shelly. Yay!
Look at you. You don't look like you were aged a minute. What the hell?
Oh, shut up.
You don't actually.
Please.
I was just watching. Both of us watched the show last night, Russian Flu, the episode, and you look exactly the same.
Oh, well, gee, thanks. Yeah, I wish.
No, I fortunately got to spend some time with Cynthia and Darren in Monaco recently.
Monaco.
And so I was able to catch up on her life, which is really great and fun. And she's, I think, the only person from the show who stayed living in Seattle. Right? We
That's
all
true.
left. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I stayed here. Elaine, Miles, Marilyn
Right.
stayed here. But yeah, I got married, raised kids, worked occasionally, and stayed in Seattle. And I'm actually sitting here in my house looking at Mount Rainier right now.
Oh, I missed that site. It was the greatest
It's a
site.
beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
Oh, Seattle was paradise. Well, Cynthia, it's great that you're on the show, and we want you to come back, of course. And we've been raving about you, you know, talking about your talent and the way you could bring such innocent simplicity, yet quirkiness and humor and depth all at the same time. Because
And then the
no one
surprising
thought
strength,
Shelly.
I think
Yeah,
the
that's what I
writers
was
get
saying.
some credit. But thank you.
But no one thought Shelly was an airhead, right? You had a depth to you,
Right.
and it was just, but you had this kind of simplicity that I was saying I wish I had. I don't know that. But not you, but the character. I'm not saying the character had a simplicity. Shelley did. You know, Rob, I'll let you ask, because you always ask the Genesis questions about how she got her start. So you want to do that?
Well, yeah. Sometimes we're you know, we've talked to everyone. We've had Josh on and Corbett and Barry, and you know, we're always interested in how you first heard about the show and what the kind of process was to get it. Like, where were you and how did that come about?
I was in LA and waiting tables. This was actually, Northern Exposure was my first pilot season. I had just gotten an agent, and that's kind of the Hollywood story. I mean, I waited on a woman who was with a big management company at this Mexican restaurant that I was working at. And it was her birthday, and I gave her free flan that we give to everybody. But and Laura Kennedy, who's a casting director, was with her and her husband. And anyway, I waited on her. At the end of the meal, she said, "Oh, are you an actress?" And I was like, "Yeah, so is everybody else here." And she's like, "Well, here's my card. Come in and see me." And so, you know, I run back to the kitchen, and I'm like, to all the other actor friends, and like, you know, have you ever heard of this? And they're like, "Oh my God, they're like big." And yeah. And so she told me to bring all my tapes to the meeting. And I'm like, okay. So I had done some commercials, and I had done Divorce Court, which is fake, by the way. And funny enough, in Divorce Court, I played a woman who was married to a much older man. And I mean, I can't even remember the whole story, but it was kind of weird. So I bring her my tapes, and I meet with her and the other managers, and they're like, "Okay, great. We're going to sign you, and we're going to put you with this agency, and we're burning the tapes." So I went through pilot season, and at that time, there actually was a season, because it was
Let's talk about pilot season for a second. If people don't know that, and it's not so much these days, but back when we were all coming up, every year from February to like April, there'd be a few months where they would all the pilots being cast, and there would be like so many, right? We would often be going to 2-3 auditions a day. All the pilots would be cast, and you would hopefully get on a pilot, and they made so many pilots that never saw the light of day. And then, you know, certain shows made it through the kind of Darwinian process to getting on the air. But so you're talking about the first year you started auditioning for a bunch of pilots, and did you go to a lot of auditions?
Oh yeah. So backing up a little bit. So this is, you know, for the people listening, this is network TV. So there's basically 3 channels, and ABC, NBC, and CBS. And so Rob's right. That was pilot season. I probably went, I don't know, 40 pilot audition. Who knows? It seemed like that. But you're right, Rob. I was going like to 3 auditions a day, and at times it was. I heard you saying earlier about how you do your best work when you're tired or sick or something like that. And I think in some ways it's like, you don't have time to even worry about it. You just kind of went, okay, let me just try to get these lines, and you go in and you just do whatever you can do, and you let it go, and you totally
That's
forget
a great
about it.
point. It's a great point.
And so this was, I got this audition, and this was in April. So I'd already auditioned for, okay, I said 40, maybe that's an exaggeration, 20 pilots, but it was a lot. And I was afraid my agents and managers were going to drop me because I didn't get anything. And I was like, I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose my agent. And so I get this audition, and Shelly's a Native American. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I forgot. I think you told me that.
The pilot script, Shelly is Native American. And I'm looking at this going, this is a waste of time. And I really don't think I'm right for this one.
Right.
And I also can't get anybody to cover my shift at the Mexican restaurant. So I'm going to lose my job going to this thing. But I go anyway because I'm afraid my agent's going to drop me if I don't go. So I go to Universal, Megan Brandman, to this audition, and I walk in, and I'm like apologizing when I walk in, going, "Yeah, I know, Native American. Do you want me to leave?" And she's like, "Oh, no. We've changed gears because we've already cast 2 brunettes, Rob and Janine, and that's Hollywood."
Right, you're right. That's a great point. Is that when you're casting, and I've done it myself, is you want a palette of colors, so to speak. And so if you have Janine and I both have dark hair, or we did. Janine has different colors every week.
Every
lately,
week,
but,
I have a different hair.
Looks great,
but Lulu, she looks beautiful. So it does whatever she's doing.
Hollywood magic. I change my hair every week. Okay, anyway,
But so in order to create an aesthetic that is appealing to the eye, they want to kind of have variety. And so here they, through trick of fate, Cynthia ends up getting this part because she's a blonde, right? Even though and she almost didn't show up, which is a great lesson to anyone.
I almost didn't show up either. And
Woody
Allen says 80% of success is showing up, and I almost didn't show up either. I was so depressed.
So I went to this audition, and 5 auditions later, and I go to network. Barry Corbin was there, John Corbett was there, Darren was there, John Cullum was there. All the rest of us were there with one other person. So it's like you're down to 2, and we sit in the basement of CBS in this hallway, and they have these little metal chairs, and you sit next to your competition, and all of the suits, we called them suits, producers and studio execs, file in front of us and into this auditorium. And there's like 30 of them in there.
Without saying a word, without saying hello or anything, right? They just ignore you.
They don't speak to you. They ignore you. They walk right past you. You sit there and you're sweating bullets. And I think I was probably the last person to go in because they took the characters in order. And, and of course, thank God for John Corbett was cracking jokes the whole time. Of course. And it was great. And he was distracting. So I actually was like, this guy is great the whole time, sitting in the hallway, kind of not thinking about what I was going to do when I went in there, because Corbett was entertaining. And
do you remember who the other girl was? Do you have any idea?
My competition? I don't.
Yeah. Because Corbett remembers it was the guy Greg from White Lotus. I forget his name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But let me ask you this. By this time, you're saying you've had 5 auditions for a part that initially you didn't even think you were right for. But how do you prepare for a part you don't think you're right for? And then by the time you got to the 5th audition, did you have a take on Shelly that was really clear in your mind?
I did. And that's a great question, Rob, because I got this script and Shelly doesn't say anything in the first couple of episodes, and I got this monologue, and it was the first time I spoke on the show, and I think it was in episode 3 maybe, and I do this whole kind of weird monologue about one-eyed Jacks, which is
in black and white. That was a wonderful. We talked about that on the phone the other day, Cynthia. And I was talking about how wonderful you were in that particular scene. Go ahead, and I'll let you reveal.
Well, I read this, and it's funny that, that the nice, lovely comments you made about, that my character and me, and because at first I read it, and I'm like, another ditzy, character, and so I was kind of not even that excited about it, because I was thinking, I'm just kind of an accessory. So I went, and I had a writer friend who was my mentor and coach, and I went to him and I was like, okay, I'm kind of dreading this. What do I do? It seems like a boring, okay, she walks in with her sandwich and in her tight clothes and goes, and we started working on it, and I started to love her. I thought the dialogue was quirky and interesting and weird, and I was able to kind of use, I am, or at least at that time, was pretty innocent, and I grew up in a, very conservative family in Mississippi, and I was able to use a good bit of myself in the character, and I just found something that I loved, and then it was great.
That came through. That's because from as soon as you come on screen, even when you had nothing to say, we were compelled to want to know what the deal was. And then, how about, what did you think about the relationship between you and Holling, who's 50 years older than you? Was that the idea?
Was it 40, 20,
no,
20?
So I'm 18 and he was in his 60s. So
is he in his 60s?
Yeah, 63.
He was, John Cullum was a year older than my father. So, and my father, I was the last of 4 kids, so they were older parents when they had me.
I think I remember. It's like vaguely coming back to me now that your father was a little worried or upset about it, or you didn't tell him about it, right?
Oh, no. That's a whole other story.
That was for a different story. I think I know it. That was for a different episode.
Story, but,
that was a different episode.
My father is a devout Catholic, so going to confession in a closet with John Corbett as the priest was not okay. The nuns didn't like it.
Right.
But the John Cullum thing was, I got a lot of flack for it. My boyfriend at the time got, all kinds of heat because his friends were like, dude, what is she doing? She's kissing this old guy. And, but John Cullum made it so wonderful and not creepy and not weird. And
he was so tender with you.
He's so tender, and I instantly fell in love with him. I mean, he made me comfortable. I walked on the set, and really never having had been on a television series, I'd never done it. I mean, I was learning. That's why I sat there every day. I would go, if I didn't have to work or not, in the first season, and sit behind the camera to learn and to watch the two of you do your work, and you did such brilliant work, and I had such amazing teachers. I mean, Rob, Janine, John Cullum, Barry Corbin. I mean, all these just fantastic actors that I got to sit there and have a masterclass and learn. And
did the directors help you?
No.
Did you? No, did they hinder you?
No, but I mean, well, actually, I take that back. That's too short a statement. I mean, some directors, yes. I mean, there were certain directors that really, Mike Fresco, for one, who was
he was great.
It was just fantastic.
He was like a father figure.
Do you remember David Carson, who directed this, the Russian Flu? He was a British guy.
I do remember him. And he was a super nice guy. I mean, I didn't have much to do.
I don't really remember him.
I do, because he was a sweet guy.
Maybe I would I'm sure I would if I saw his face. You know.
Yeah, you would.
It was interesting because I learned a lot by just watching and absorbing, and that's back to the John Cullum.
He's such a Broadway actor. I mean, the depth of the scope of his work.
What better teacher than John Cullum? And
absolutely.
Also, and a teacher of how to behave on a set.
Absolutely.
And not only his acting, but just how he was on the set. Just the most humble, giving, kind, respectful, polite human being. I mean, here he is, a 2-time Tony winner, and he just never complained about anything. We'd be shooting at midnight.
Nor did you, by the way. You were never. I can't remember. I've said it before. It's hard. I'm hard pressed to remember a day where you were having a bad day.
Well, I'm
sure you did, but it never came onto the set.
I was super grateful and happy to be in that position. I felt really lucky. I loved it. I mean, it was a hell of a lot better than waiting tables. I was terrible as a real waitress.
Real waitress. That's right, because you played a waitress. And that's interesting. Hang on, because that's interesting because I had $8 left too, and I was so grateful. And in those long hours of Rob and I earlier were talking about the 18-hour days. They were long days. Yeah. And I just remember saying, it's better than being broke and unemployed. It's better than being broke and employed. And there came a time when the show became, remember that explosion of the show? Yeah. It was in 1991, maybe 1991. I couldn't even sit at a restaurant, right? Because people would come running in. There was such an explosion to the show, and people would say, how do you put up with that? And I said, well, it's better than being broke and unemployed, which is, I'd always worked, but I was down to $8 and I was tired and all that. But it's a great opportunity.
When I see other shows, when I taking off, I can know what they're going. Like White Lotus they're everywhere. That cast is like everywhere, and I just remember thinking, what we were going through. I know what they're going. Being shuttled from talk show to photo shoot to event, and
everything changes.
It does change. But, I just want to go back a second. I think one thing that you said, that you would show up and sit on the set. And I remember you coming to work when you weren't even in the scenes. And John Corbett talked about that as well. And I think pointing out to anyone who's a wannabe actor out there, if you find yourself on a set, spend time watching, hang out as much as they'll let you, because you can learn so much by watching. John Corbett talked about being an extra, and he said he learned almost everything he needed to at least get his going.
Most people can't make that jump. Most people can't make that jump from an extra to in front of the camera either. But, Shelly, Cynthia, not Shelly, Cynthia, I want to talk about your costumes too, because your costumes were always so funky, and that was a part of your character. And I really want us to talk about this episode too, because I think that Russian Flu was and your little moment coming out, you had quite the star moment in this episode, Russian Flu. But talk about your costumes.
Well, again, I think there were so many factors in this show. It was the magic. Everybody came together in a beautiful way. And the costume designer, Catherine Bentley, I have to give her all the credit, because this was her genius.
We always say rest in peace to Catherine.
Yes. She has passed away, and I miss her. But it was her idea and her vision. And she told me when we sat down and talked about it, I never would have picked these clothes. But she said, no, I see Shelly as dressing like a child, almost, like a you know how little girls wear the leggings and the skirt and the vest, and they're all these different colors and the boots. And it's really funny because
And everything mismatching in a brilliant way.
Yes, in a brilliant way. And it's just kind of out there. And that was her vision, and it worked. And it was crazy. And there were things that I put on and went, oh yeah. But it worked, and I got it, and it made me feel like the character.
And the hair too. Oh, go ahead. Finish talking about Kat.
Yeah, she created, I don't know if people notice this, but if you do go back and watch the show, she created earrings for every episode. Every earrings I wore had something to do with the show. I mean, if it was Russian, it would be this little Cossack guy hanging from my ears, or something bizarre,
so clever, so interesting,
something from the dream sequence. And there would be little huskies on my ears because my character walked out with huskies, and it was just little tiny touches that most people wouldn't notice. But it's funny, they do. I had a fan call or message me and send me these. She bought, when Northern Exposure ended, there was a big auction of all this stuff, and somehow she got a hold of the earrings, and she sent me all these photos of the earrings and things that I had worn on the show. It was really cool.
Your father must have loved that when you walked out and you were a prostitute. But who uses a condom?
That wasn't mentioned.
No, they do. They talk about it. They say
in your family it wasn't mentioned.
Nobody mentioned it. Family
It wasn't mentioned. No, that again, this show. I mean, there were so many really deeper messages and psychological, just everything.
But you look so beautiful in that shot. When the camera was on you,
hot.
And then they did that close up, and you took your. Yeah, she did. And you take your glasses off and your big eyes, are there, and you just looked beautiful. And I think that was what was so fun about these dream sequences. And every script was sort of like a short story. I mean, here we are having this whole Russian theme, and they're talking about Trotsky and, communism and all of this. But just the dream sequences where Rob's getting all dolled up, and the little children, he goes, "Hi, my little Eskimos," and I'm there as Amelia Earhart, and there's Cullum, answering, there's a doorman. Cullum is the doorman, and Elaine is the housekeeper. I mean, not Elaine is the chef, I guess, and Marilyn.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. No, wait. Elaine, your girlfriend Elaine was the chef. She was cooking.
Yeah.
Well, she's my sister.
And then Marilyn.
She's my sister.
She was your sister. That's right. She was your sister.
No, that was the Freudian. She's the dream is his sister.
Do you know what? You know what?
For Maggie.
Cynthia, you know what? I don't know if you know this, but Josh told us that Joni Mitchell was absolutely convinced that Shelly was written based on her life as a kid.
No.
I never heard that, right? Yeah, and so we're going to try to get her as a guest at some point because I guess she watched the show. So you never heard that before?
No, but I would be killed to talk to her and meet her. And wow,
we should bring you both on the same show. I think we should bring you both on.
Okay, maybe we'll do that. I think that's a good idea.
You're the episode that's the biggest. It's one of your biggest episodes. We should make sure that both of you are on. I think that'd be really fun. Yeah. Well, what did you think about this episode, Russian Flu? What were your thoughts? What was your takeaway from it? Since we are about this,
first of all, I want to say thank you guys for doing this because it made me. I went back and watched all of these shows, and I watched the first season, and it's such, I can say this completely humble with not anything about me or us. It was such a great show. It was so creative, and it stands up. It stands the test of time. The dream, people don't realize now, but dream sequences weren't done at that time, and the weird nod to Twin Peaks in this episode.
Isn't that the strangest scene? It doesn't make sense, but it works. But it's just so what was that?
Yeah, it was just amazing. And there's just so many facets to Northern Exposure, to every episode. There's there's something for everybody, but it's so deep and dense in the ideas, and it's funny, but it really makes you think. And I am now going to go back through the whole thing, and it's fun to watch it at this point in my life because, and I don't know if you guys feel like this, but I feel like I'm not watching for me anymore. When I watched it back when we made it was
we were watching our acting movements.
That's
yeah,
a great point.
My acting, I'm figuring out what scenes they cut, and what I'm mad about this, or that didn't look great, or I could have done that better, or blah blah blah, or wasn't Janine brilliant in that scene, and Rob was fantastic. And now I can just sit back and watch it without any judgments, and watch it as a show. And appreciate how brilliant it was.
I still watch my overacting. I see myself overacting a lot. No.
I don't know, Rob. I think you always did such a good job. But I thought also in this particular episode, Marilyn was so great. This was really, I think, kind of her shining moment, and how she never told him what was in Ohio, Ipsinaio. And I'd forgotten that. We walked around saying that for years, Ohio, Ipsinaio. And then I'd forgotten all about it. And then suddenly I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's right. Ohio, Ipsinaio.
Yeah.
Ohio, Ipsinaio was the native formula that Marilyn, played by Elaine Miles, brings in to help the town that's all suffering from this Russian flu that's gotten out of hand. And it's the implication is that the main ingredient is some kind of animal feces, because it
moose dung
stinks.
or something.
Right?
Yeah, it was really bad.
But see, I love even that. It's like Rob, the doctor, is so against it and can't, ethically give it to anyone because he's got to find out the compounds. But at the end of that episode, he's kind of embraced the homeopathic remedy, and he
wants to make money. He wants to make money from it.
You're right, of course. So he's like, he's always got two. He's got an altruistic goal, but he also has a selfish goal as well.
Yeah. I can get out of here.
But that's a great point. I mean, and I think Janine's talked about this a lot. Is like, the characters always seem to kind of grow in subtle ways. They would that they would learn and change, and that Joel does get off it at the end and sees the potential of it. I think is a real testament to the writing.
Multifaceted, multi-layered, and I think what we've all said today on this show today is that there's something in it for everybody. If you wanted to come see a romance, if you wanted to see quirkiness, if you wanted to see the beautiful landscape, if you wanted to see hear an intellectualism that was groundbreaking, really, in television, it was all there. But also that north to the future small town. I talked about it earlier. I love the whole federalism, small town, the town hall where they attack Rob, Fleischman, and say, he's a Trotskyite. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatnot. They brought all the Russia history, the Bering Strait, and all of this into the show.
Well, I think two of our writer producers had a PhD in Russian history. Is that right, or philosophy? It was Andy and Diane.
Did they?
You're right. It's interesting how they draw. The writers.
They weren't on the show yet for this one. I don't think.
Were they not?
I don't think they were there yet
Not for the
either.
first season.
But it's interesting because Russia was a theme throughout the series. I mean, it kept coming back. We kept having, storylines that dealt with Russia.
Well, think about it. The wall hadn't fallen down quite yet, right? Tear down this wall happened in '89.
Right, so we were 90.
Happening.
So right, it was just
but I mean, it
happening,
just happened. It was all still. No one knew what was going to happen.
Right, absolutely.
Janine,
Absolutely.
back to your point of something for everyone. The other thing, and I've had several people tell me, pointed out recently, and was another really interesting, different thing about Northern Exposure was the spiritual, the Native American influence, and I think what you were saying about Marilyn in this episode was so brilliant because she's so wise. I mean, she just looks at Joel and nods her head and keeps giving the remedy. And it's so different from Western culture and Western medicine and the way it was like, okay, and she's giving it and everyone's getting well and she lets him take the credit for it.
Yeah. Do you ever see her up in Seattle?
I haven't seen Elaine Miles in a while, but I do occasionally, and she's just wonderful.
We
You know,
want her
she
to come
does
on the show.
stand up.
No way.
No, you're kidding.
She does stand up.
Have you seen it?
At powwows? And I haven't. I've seen recordings of it, and she's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does she still?
I'd
Does she
love
have
to
the same
see
delivery, like that kind of monotone?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because there was we were talking about in one episode, the editing, would cut to her face at just the right time, and the expressions on her face. And I'm just saying here, I'm going to go on record saying I want to learn a little something from Marilyn, to maybe just nod and not speak. I tend to be pretty outspoken. I'm a Sagittarian. I'm very outspoken. I did the chart, and I'm a challenger. And so I thought, okay, I need to learn how to just keep my mouth closed and nod. You spend, but Cynthia, as a woman in the business, you spend so much time fighting to not just be a woman who nods. Right? Because we were given, we had little to do. The roles weren't challenging. They were TNA and whatnot, or that type of thing. So we spend so much time fighting, especially for women from our generation. We just had to fight to try to find something that had a deeper level of integrity to it. So you spend your whole life trying to say, I'm more than just this how I look. And now that I'm 62, I think I just want to nod.
Let me ask you this, Cynthia. What do you remember from, Janine was talking about it a little earlier, when the show took off and all of a sudden you were getting recognized and you knew you had income and your life was changing? Like, what do you did you enjoy that? Was it fun?
Yes. It was amazing. To be honest, I didn't realize how much it was taking off until I got woken up at 4:00 in the morning. One of our PAs, Devin Fredericks, called me and said, "Hey, you got nominated for an Emmy."
Yeah.
I didn't even know I was put up for an Emmy. The show put us up for it, and I was like, what? And so there was that. We were insulated up in Seattle and where we shot, especially in Redmond, Washington, and that I didn't really realize how big the show was.
I bet your parents liked it when you got the Emmy nomination.
Oh, they did, but they always thought this was just something fun. I was gonna move back to Mississippi and
grow out of it. Yeah, but you had that.
That's
but
amazing.
I think I had that same moment when I remember sitting on the kitchen counter, and because we did 8 and 8. Well, Arab says 8 and 7. I thought it was 8 and 8, but maybe it was 8 and 7, whatever it was. Oh, okay, it was 8 and 7. We did 8 and 7, and then it was started to percolate. And I remember sitting in my mother's kitchen in Texas and getting the phone call that I was nominated for a Golden Globe, and I was saying like you said, I was like, oh. Really? And we'd had that press conference and whatnot, but I didn't know how the Hollywood worked. I didn't know the operations of it or any of the mechanics of the background of that type of genre of awards.
Yeah, you could say that they, what we learned.
I was naive.
None of us
there was
knew.
a naivete still to all of us.
And what we did know was that the studio has to put you up for the award. It's not just like people just like think, oh, Cynthia was great, I want to know. It's like there's a whole process, and money is spent and and PR is done to try to get attention so that these nominations will come. And you still have to be good and they have to like what you're doing, but it's a bit of a game that we.
I never knew they were picking episodes for us for our acting. No one ever asked me. It's like I would have picked a completely different episode. You know what I mean? But
we were in the drama category, and again at that time we were a dramedy. We would be a comedy today, and it was kind of weird because we were up against much more dramatic show people who
like
had
LA Law
who were crying. Yeah.
Right.
When I was nominated for an Emmy, I remember watching the other actresses, and they're crying and they're having meltdowns, and there I am kind of doing this drama comedy, and we really as actors it was hard for us to hold up in that category. But one of the reasons they want us to be a comedy so badly is because they wanted us to be on Monday night after Murphy Brown.
Right.
Because Murphy Brown was such a hit, and that would give us great exposure, no pun intended.
Which was a great lineup. We haven't talked about the lineup. Do you remember the lineup, Janina?
What was before Murphy Brown? There was something really great before Murphy Brown.
There was the Burt Reynolds show, right? Burt Reynolds played there was some show. There was I forget. There was. We have to look that up. Like, what was our lead in besides Murphy Brown?
I just remember Murphy Brown.
And then you don't remember the Burt Reynolds one? There was like before that there was a Burt Reynolds one, and then there was I think Wonder Years was NBC.
All I know is Murphy Brown, and they wanted us to be funny. But we were a kind of a quirky drama with some humor. So it was an interesting category for us. But yeah, I talk about living in Seattle. Did you enjoy living in Seattle?
Well, clearly I did, because I'm still here.
Yeah.
I did. I had never been to the Northwest before the show and got moved here like we all did. And we all lived in the same apartment complex the first season, which I think was another reason we were able to bond the way we were and feel like a family, because we all lived in these corporate apartments near the set. And we were all transplants, and so we didn't have other friends, and we did things together. I mean, we went out together afterwards, and that first season, I think, really cemented our relationship with each other and off the set as well as on the set. But yes, I love Seattle. It's so beautiful. I love nature, and I'm a water skier and snow skier, and it speaks to me in all of those ways. And then it's a great arts town. There's great theater and music, and I love live music. Rob, you got to come play up here.
I know. I do. I want to come up there. I want to come live there again. I love that place. I think one of my regrets is I didn't buy land.
House there.
We could have bought land for nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And I do miss that. But I do remember going out with you guys. It was you, me, Corbett, and Janine. We went out dancing and partying, and it was so fun. It was just so, we were like getting to know the town, which Corbett ended up owning basically with his nightclub. And
Corbett bought a bar.
Yeah, I visited him at that bar once. There was like a two-way glass or whatever, his little office, and it was a bizarre experience. Well, I remember when Rob and I got off the plane, and we arrived in Seattle, and I'd been in New York City for 4 or 5 straight years, and that gets a little old when you don't have a lot of money.
Oh, Evening Shade was the Burt Reynolds show.
That's right.
Yeah.
Evening Shade. That's right.
Designing Women. Was that
was Designing Women? Was that before us? But Evening Shade.
Yeah.
I did a pilot for the creator after Northern Exposure. But when Rob and I got off the plane, and when we got to those little sort of business apartments where we were living, it was like, Mom, I called my mother. I said, Mom, listen, frogs. And I put the phone out because there are all these frogs chirping, going chirp, 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 chirp. And then the beautiful pine trees. It was incredibly gorgeous. And then we should talk a little bit before we close here about driving every 8 days through the Cascade Mountains, which sometimes we did through incredible snowstorms. I remember driving through vertigo, not even in the dark with snow. We couldn't even see where we were, and we would get over the mountain into the Cascade Mountains, and we stayed in that what was it? It was an old business office. It was a business office. It was like a holiday. Yes, it was like a Holiday Inn or worse.
That motel,
it was like,
the Cle Elum.
Yeah. But it had like a little
Timberline Inn, I think.
The Timber
Lodge. The Timber Lodge.
Right.
Timber Lodge?
Yeah.
Was it Timber Lodge?
Here, I'm going to look it up. Okay. I think it was Timberline. But yeah.
It was an old office building, and the beds were hard, and the toilets had the little tape over them that they'd been cleaned with the little tiny bar soap. It was just this, like, it was barely a hotel, and that's where we all stayed. It was so not glamorous. It was just everything we did about the show was really down to earth. Our studio wasn't a big, beautiful studio in Universal Lot. It was this old warehouse again. There was a humility about being there, which I think worked to our benefit, probably in every way.
Well, we kind of have to wrap it up, Cynthia, although I think we could speak to you for hours. And as Janine said, we definitely will have you back if you want to come back. But have fun.
I miss you guys.
Yeah, you look great, and watching, I think like you said it so perfectly. Like watching the show now with the distance we have is such a joy, and I get to. I appreciate everyone else's work more than I did then. I mean, and I did then, but now I'm not watching myself as much as you say. And so you were so great, and that character was so charming and quirky and had so many different dimensions. And then over time, they started to really write for you, and she developed into such a cool woman. I
remember the episode with the satellite. When you ordered all, that was a big episode for you, and you ordered all those things in the middle of the night because you became addicted to. Yeah. But Shelly, you were brilliant in the show, and I miss you too. I miss you a lot, and I'm glad that this has brought us all back together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so next week we have Janine. Who do we have next week?
I don't know yet.
Oh, really? Oh,
we have to work on that.
Okay. All right. Well,
but we are going to New York. We're gonna film together in New York, which will be fun in a couple of weeks. But
cool.
I think Darren. I think we're hoping for Darren.
That's what I thought. So we're hoping Darren Burroughs will be with us next week, and as we said before, you can watch the show on the Northern Disclosure channel on YouTube, or you can listen to it on your podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and
you can watch the show on Prime Video.
And you can watch the show on Prime Video.
And I think there are ways to watch it for free too. It's like all the different. It's out there in a lot of places. It's not just It's Prime Video has all his arms and everything, fingers and everything.
All right. Well, as we like to say, what do we like to say, Janine? North
to the future. Shall we all say it, Cynthia? Oh, wait, before we do that, Rob, we have to sign off with the signature
right, but first we have to do North. We do that second.
You want to do North to the future first? Okay, fine. Okay. All right. So we always do North to the future. You want to do it with us, Cynthia?
Absolutely.
Okay, ready? So you can say sign off.
1, 2, 3.
North to the
future.
Oh gosh. Well, this has been fun, and we will see you next week, or we'll talk with you next week. So Rob, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for listening. We're going to sign off from O'Connell and Fleischman.
The only thing is, I think it should probably be Fleischman O'Connell.
In your dreams, Fleischman.
Northern Disclosure is a production with Evergreen Podcasts and executive produced by Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media.